When we think of a superhero, we kind of picture a symbol of hope, right? A powerful figure fighting for truth, justice, and a better tomorrow. This is that classic, aspirational hero we've all grown up with, the embodiment of the American dream. But where did that dream even begin?
Well, nobody represents this ideal better than Superman. He's the ultimate refugee success story. He was born on a dying planet, rocketed to Earth, and then raised in Kansas. He wasn't just some alien who tried to blend in. He became this beloved icon because he used his outsider perspective and his incredible powers to protect the very society that took him in.
But is that simple, heroic narrative still the one we're seeing today? In the last couple of decades, something has profoundly shifted in how we tell these stories. It really forces us to ask, has the dream turned into something else?
To really get that shift, we have to go back to the beginning. Let's take a look at the original blueprint for the immigrant hero and what Superman really stood for, long before the world and our stories changed forever.
You see, the early Superman wasn't just stopping bank robbers. His creators, who were the children of Jewish immigrants, made him a true champion for social justice. Look at this list. He fought against corrupt politicians, domestic abusers, and real-world evils like the Nazis and the KKK. He was a hero who was fighting to make society better from the inside.
And then, September 11th, 2001 happened. That was a moment that didn't just change the geopolitical landscape. It created this deep historical break in our culture, in our imagination, and it fundamentally changed the kinds of heroes we wanted and maybe felt we needed to see on screen.
And wow, this image just perfectly illustrates that break. This shot from the original trailer for the 2002 Spider-Man movie was pulled from circulation almost immediately. The Twin Towers, which were once this symbol of American power, suddenly became a symbol of vulnerability. And right there, in that reflection, we see the exact moment our superhero stories were forced to confront a new and honestly a terrifying new reality.
The philosopher Judith Butler really captures the psychological shock of it all. For the first time in modern history, mainland America's sense of being untouchable was just shattered. The violence that was always over there was suddenly shockingly right here. And that feeling of being violated became the new emotional core for the superhero stories that followed.
So this brings us to a really key concept, empirical reality. Think of it like a bubble that many Americans were living in, a daily life that was shielded from the direct consequences of the nation's foreign policy. Sure, wars were happening, but they were abstract, out of sight, out of mind. Well, 9/11 pierced that bubble, and our movies have been trying to process that rupture ever since.
This huge psychological shift created a whole new aesthetic in the films themselves, one that let audiences relive this trauma of mass destruction, but this time with a really crucial element of control, the myth of a clean war.
Think about it. How many times have you seen entire city blocks just leveled in a superhero movie, but we almost never see the human cost? This empty city thing is a total fantasy. It presents this mass destruction as a spectacle without any real consequences. And it reinforces this idea that war can be surgically precise, with no messy collateral damage.
And the films themselves totally lean into this. This quote from Age of Ultron is fascinating, isn't it? It's a robotic, almost bureaucratic announcement of safety right in the middle of total chaos. It's the fantasy of a perfectly managed conflict, where destruction can just be paused and contained, and civilians are just an inconvenience to be managed, not victims.
Okay, so if the cities are empty, who are our heroes actually fighting? Well, this leads us to the next critical piece of the puzzle, the creation of a perfect, disposable enemy that we can cheer for the destruction of, completely guilt-free.
All right, let's break down this concept of necropolitics. I know it sounds complex, but it's actually pretty simple. Ultimate power isn't just about governing the living, it's about having the authority to decide who gets to live and who is, designated to die. And our superheroes, in this new era, have become the ultimate deciders of this power.
And they use this power on what we can call digital others. You know them, the faceless, computer-generated hordes. The Chitauri, the Outriders, the Parademons. They're not characters, they're basically a swarm. They exist for one reason and one reason only, to be slaughtered in visually spectacular ways, which removes any moral questions about what the hero is doing. They're basically just zombified targets.
And this line from Captain America just cuts right to the heart of it all. The moral logic of the post-9/11 world is brutally simple. There's just no room for nuance or for understanding the enemy's motivation. If they are a threat, they are to be eliminated, period.
The complex world of the early Superman is gone, and it's been replaced by this black and white struggle of good versus pure, uncomplicated evil.
But here's where it gets really clever, and maybe a little cynical. These movies aren't totally blind to the problems of the world. In fact, they often seem to criticize the very systems they represent, only to end up reinforcing them by the time the credits roll.
This whole phenomenon is explained by this concept called capitalist realism. It's this pervasive idea that, it's easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism. These films can show us the world ending a dozen different ways, but they can't seem to imagine a truly different system. It's a fascinating pattern when you start looking for it. The villains get all the best lines. They're the ones talking about inequality, about colonialism, or the corruption of the powerful. But the film frames their legitimate criticisms as just the justification for chaos. So by the end, the villain is defeated, their ideas are totally discredited, and the system is safely put back the way it was. The rebellion is literally packaged and sold to us.
And this is a brilliant illustration of that process. Just look at Black Panther. On the left, you have Killmonger, and he's presenting this radical, global vision of liberation. But on the right, you see the film's actual solution, a well-funded outreach center. A really powerful critique of global inequality is safely downsized into a form of nonprofit philanthropy. The revolutionary fire is completely contained.
Or what about Bane in The Dark Knight Rises? He delivers this fiery speech that sounds like it could have been ripped straight from the headlines of the Occupy Wall Street movement. He's voicing the real frustrations of the masses, but the movie makes sure his revolution leads directly to show trials and anarchy, basically warning the audience that any attempt to truly overthrow the system will only lead to an even worse nightmare.
So, does that mean all superhero stories are just trapped in this loop, destined to only ever protect the status quo? Or are there any films that have found a way to break out and imagine something truly different? Which really brings us to the big question of this whole explainer. Is there an escape? Can a story that's born from the heart of an empire ever truly critique it? Or is it just doomed to forever reinforce the same old logic?
Well, there are some glimmers of hope. Films like Thor Ragnarok and Logan refuse to just put everything back to normal. In Ragnarok, the heroes realize their kingdom was built on colonial conquest, and the only way forward is to literally destroy their home. And in Logan, the hero dies to save a new generation, telling them not to become what they were made to be. The solution isn't restoration, it's destruction and escape.
So, this leaves us with a final thought. The next time you watch a city crumble on screen, ask yourself, what future is this hero really fighting to save? Is it a future of genuine change and justice for all, like the original Superman? Or is it a future that just looks an awful lot like the present, only with a whole lot more rubble?